The moment the shelter team motioned for the rescued dog to approach the woman, a hush fell over the room. Volunteers held their breath, waiting for a reaction, a wagging tail, a spark of recognition, any sign at all. But nothing. The dog remained still, his eyes distant, as if the woman before him was just another face in the crowd. The air grew thick with expectation and doubt. It wasn't common for a dog to ignore a human like that, especially one who, by all indications, should have meant the world to him. What was happening? Years ago, Eleanor's world was full of warmth. In her arms, a tiny puppy with soft fur and bright, restless eyes nibbled playfully at her fingers. She named him Max. From the very first moment, he was more than just a pet. He was family. Max was her shadow in the quiet mornings and her comfort on difficult nights. When the silence in the house threatened to become unbearable, the soft patter of his paws filled the empty spaces. After losing her husband, Max became the thread that kept her tethered to the world, a refuge against loneliness. But in 2017, everything changed. It was an ordinary day, with no warning that her life was about to unravel. Eleanor returned home from work, her bag slung over her shoulder, already anticipating Max's excited greeting. But as she turned the key in the lock, an eerie silence met her. Her chest tightened. She dropped her bag on the couch and hurried toward the backyard. The gate, slightly ajar. The padlock missing. A hole torn into the fabric of her reality. "Max!" Her voice wavered, echoing through the empty space. No response. No eager paws rushing toward her. Only the cold wind brushing against her face, carrying with it the weight of a painful truth. Max was gone. The search began before Eleanor could fully process her grief. With trembling hands and a pounding heart, she printed dozens of posters. Each sheet carried not just Max's image, but the desperation of an owner who refused to give up. She walked through the streets, taping flyers to poles and handing out leaflets in local shops. But that wasn't enough. The internet became her greatest tool, her voice stretching beyond the city. She flooded social media groups, forums, and community pages, any place that might bring a clue. With every post, hope flickered. Someone had to have seen him. Someone had to know something. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and the silence remained. In the mornings, his absence was a fresh wound, a reminder that the house was still empty. At night, the quiet was deafening, filling every corner where once there had been the soft rhythm of his breath. The posters faded under the elements, peeling from lampposts, as if time itself was trying to erase them. Meanwhile, somewhere in the city, Max was fighting his own battle. The warmth of home was now just a distant memory. His world had become cold alleyways and empty sidewalks, where hunger and fear walked hand in hand. Each day was a test of survival. Scraps of food were his only feast, fought over with other strays just as lost as he was. The hum of traffic was a constant threat. Danger always lurking, demanding quick reflexes and luck. Time had reshaped him. His once soft fur was now tangled and matted. His paws, once quick to chase after Eleanor, were cracked and sore from endless wandering. And his eyes, once filled with light, had dulled. The city moved on, indifferent. And Max, a dog who had once known love, had learned to become invisible. But fate, unpredictable as ever, had one more twist in store. Shelter volunteers found him curled up under the shadow of a storefront awning, too weak to resist as gentle hands reached out. But something about this touch was different. It wasn't a threat or a fight or another betrayal. It was kindness. For the first time in a long time, Max let himself be led. At the shelter, warmth greeted him. The scent of food filled his senses, and the softness of blankets was foreign against his worn-out body. Volunteers worked patiently, untangling his fur, treating his wounds, whispering words he didn't understand, but words that carried something he had long forgotten: care. And yet, inside him, something was still missing. 2 years passed. Eleanor had learned to live with the ache of loss, though it never fully faded. Some days, she still found herself glancing at the door, half expecting to hear familiar paws rushing toward her. Then, on an ordinary day, a flicker of hope appeared. Scrolling through social media, Eleanor came across a post from a local shelter. A photo, A dog. Her heart stopped. She clicked on the image, scanning every detail. His coat was different. The years had left their mark. But his eyes, those eyes... Her fingers shook against the phone screen. The caption told of a rescued dog in need of a home. His journey won a hardship and survival. But Eleanor didn't need a story. She knew. The tears came before she could fully process it. But for the first time in a long time, they weren't tears of loss. They were tears of hope. She didn't hesitate. With trembling hands, she typed a message to the shelter, explaining every detail only an owner would know. She described the small scar on his back paw, the way he used to press against her side on cold nights. She recounted how he had vanished 2 years ago, taking a piece of her heart with him. The response came quickly. The volunteers were just as shocked as they were moved. For months, they had tried to find a home for this quiet, wounded dog, never realizing he already had one. A reunion was arranged, and Eleanor didn't waste a second. Her heart pounded as she stepped through the shelter doors. She scanned the room. She would know him anywhere. And then there he was, curled up in the corner, his fur thin, his body worn from a life she had never seen. But it was him, every inch of him. Tears blurred her vision. She stepped forward. Max! But the response she had dreamed of never came. No wagging tail. No spark of recognition. Just silence. The story continues.